Hello everyone, this is Liz coming at you with a tutorial this time. Yes, this time I'm showing you a quick example of how I use Inkscape to do some of my designs. I'm going to start by opening it up. We've got our basic setup here. This is the latest version 2.91, and I'm embedding an image into the file first thing because I made a sketch beforehand. This is actually a tribal design. Tribals are one of the things that made my images popular, so I'm taking that sketch and I'm going to set it to half opacity so that I can see my lines as I work. And then I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm going to make all of my objects. Now, every time I make a node, which is the point where the handles come out, I just click and drag. And when I want to make, say, a corner node, I hold Shift while I'm moving the handle. What I'm doing here is just adjusting it ever so slightly, and I may get back to it later. And I just do that over and over again until I have it complete. Of course, that's not all of it. On this next object, I'm putting together a couple of objects that will eventually become the one object. And I'm going a little outside my sketch. That's for a reason. Here I'm making an object that I will use to cut a portion out of the other object. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select both objects, go to Different, and there we go. We have the object that I wanted. Now I'm going to add a few more objects, and this is on the eye portion. I'm going to duplicate the one eyelash I made, and then I'm going to put it on multiple places. I moved the handle. When you double click an item, you get the rotate arrows, and it shows a little cross, and that's the rotation point. And when you move that, it rotates around that point. And I'm just using the node editor to edit the nodes again. And then I'm going to select all four objects and union them into one object. Then I'm going to duplicate that object and use the guide that I just made by pulling down from the ruler to pull the other one over parallel and then shrink it down to size. Now, something I'm going to show you, interestingly enough, with this guide in a moment, is in a minute, I'm going to show you how to get rid of those. Right now, I'm just working on the top part, making the two pieces of the hair and the horn. This is a random My Little Pony blind back character, by the way, Sweetie Swirls, and I just chose her for the design just to show how to use this. So again, I'm going outside of the boundaries of my sketch. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing as the eye, but with multiple parts of the design, so that so that unifies them together and helps define the head. One of the first things that I made in Inkscape is vector style designs, and it helped. It's what when I was on DeviantArt and when I got on Tumblr, making tribal designs of things that were popular at the time is what got me a lot of followers at first. So I'm making the individual objects, and again, I could copy and paste the two parts in the middle, but I prefer to make them by hand because that way it looks more like I originally sketched it. It just looks better in my opinion. Using the green object I made as a guide, I'm making the last piece, and then I'm going to make all of those, I'm going to union all of these objects, which makes them one big object, and then I'm going to use the green object to take a chunk out of them using the difference command, and then I'm going to use the break apart command to make them all into their own objects again. So I just have to finish it off, and then for this last part, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try copying one part of it, but first I have to get rid of this guide because it keeps snapping, the nodes keep snapping to the guide, so I'm going to double click it and delete. And I actually want to show you that again. I'm going to double click it, and you can do relative change. You can move these things around. It gives you different properties like inches and such. But I just need that out of the way because otherwise the nodes automatically snap to it, which is good when you're doing some designs, but not good for this. So I'm going to make the top part of it doing the same thing I did before. And then I'm going to try duplicating it and messing with the nodes to make it into the next object. Now honestly it would be faster if I just made a new object, but I wanted to do this to kind of show that no matter what I do, it doesn't really distort the lines. I don't get any pixelation like I would with a raster object. This program gives you a lot of freedom. I've been using it for a few years now, and it's one of my favorites to do designs in. Like when you need something that looks painterly, you go with a raster program, Photoshop, or some of you are familiar with GIMP or MyPaint. When you need something that looks slick, you go with a vector program like this. And the last one I'm just making by hand because I'm not remaking the other objects into this. That's not going to work. And again, I'm making this, and this time I'm hitting enter to finish my line, and then since I've still got the pen tool selected, I can add on to my line. And this works sometimes when you need to like put a line, leave a line away until you're able to finish it later, because all you have to do is have the pen tool and that object selected, and then you can add on to it until it makes a complete object. And that's it. Well, that's it for the object anyway. As soon as I've got this all set where I want it, because I don't really like how that particular part looks, I'm going to mess with the nodes for a minute. Just mess with them, make one, add one, make it a corner one, all that, just sort of make it look more the way I want it. And this tutorial isn't really to teach you how to do tribal. You may have figured it out, but tribal designs are really, I found, more up to the artist. The person online who inspired me had done a bunch of Pokemon tribals, and theirs were very in-depth. Lots of detail, and I don't really like that. I like doing simple objects, maybe a lot of simple objects, but the vision is very clear. It's more inspired by tribal designs than actually tribal designs. So how you draw them is up to you. I'm just teaching you how to use vector to make a really smooth, really slick image. I've almost got it how I want it. Ah, perfect. Okay, so I've got it the way I want it. I'm going to get rid of the sketch, and that's what the objects look like. These are just transparent objects with a black outline, and there's one way you could finish it. You could get rid of the stroke, just add black fill, make it one big object with the union command, and then you'd be done. I'm going to show you how to do it, a few different ways to do it with color, because we've got this big crayon box available to us, and I'm able to select them using the fill option and the color wheel, which some of you have used. So what I'm going to do is, I've got the blind bag toy at the time I'm making this, and I'm just using that to make a color swatch that I can just pull from. You don't want to go with more than like 3 or 4 basic colors, otherwise your design gets really confusing. At least you don't want to use them for the focus. If you want to take one big object, make a big gradient with every color in the rainbow and just put it across, it works just fine. If that's what you want to do, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to mess with it. I want to make it really clear. That's what I did with my other designs. Like, it looks great like this, and I want to make it also look good in color. It doesn't have to be both. You don't have to do color. You don't have to stick with black and white. Completely up to you. So I'm just kind of adjusting it by hand, which is what I enjoy doing, with picking colors out at first, and then I can just pull from that whenever. So I've got 2 pinks, a yellow, and a bright blue, which is a little tricky to get, but I think I've got it here. And that's going to be my color swatch. So there are a few different ways to do it. One way is to just add solid colors to make it look like what you're trying to emulate. So I'm going with light pink for some parts, dark pink for others, and I just fill it in as accurate to what I'm emulating as possible. And that's one way to do it. And if you have a good color scheme, then you can make it look really good. honest to goodness. At this point, I was trying to figure out exactly where the colors were going to go. I'm recording the audio at a different time as the video, you probably could tell. And that's one way to do it. And if you're doing like a card design, or if you really like how this looks, then by all means, but that's not how this is going to end. I want to show gradients. I want to show a couple ways to do them. So I'm going to go back to making it one big object again. And this is another way to do it really simply. I'm going to add a gradient to it. The tool's here somewhere. There it is. I'm going to select it. I'm going to add a gradient. I'm just going to pull it across. And it is a circle gradient. There are two types, a line and a circle. You'll see the line done later. At this point, I'm just trying to figure out how exactly to add nodes to the gradient. There's a specific way to do it. There's like a really specific way. And I finally figured it out. While the object is selected, you have to make sure neither node says selected, and then you have to click somewhere on the design while also on the line, which means you cannot click an empty space, otherwise it does not select. And that is really frustrating, and that's going to be a pain in the butt, but you're going to have to get through it. It's the best I've got. The update was kind of weird. I had to actually reinstall this because the program just stopped working on me. I had a really old version, like 1 point something, but they're to 2.91, and it's really cool. They put all this effort into this open source thing. They don't ask for any money. They do accept donations last I checked. And yeah, I mean, it's really... I'm not going to say it's intuitive, but once you get into it, it's easier to figure out. So I'm adding a gradient here, a really basic one, with all 4 of my colors, and you'll see that I'm adding one really close to the center and making it the same color as the center, and that's so that I can control how far out the inner color goes, because I find that it tends to get washed out by the color right next to it. So after that, it's just a matter of where you want your center point. You just mess with that for a little bit, and then you're done. And I've done that for a design before, and it looked fine there, but not so much here. I just want to show what that looks like, and then we can move on. So that's one way to do it. And it might look good for other color schemes, but it doesn't look very good here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to apply gradients to different parts. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm taking a few different parts and I'm making them one object, again with the union command. Now there is another command called the group command that acts similarly, but it's a bunch of different objects that are sort of tacked together. You can't really edit them the same way, and they don't act as one object. They act as multiple objects, and it's a little confusing. So I'm adding a line gradient, and I'm making sure it is in fact a line gradient, because I'm going to have a line gradient go all the way down this. And then I'm just putting 2 or 3 colors on this line gradient. And that's one part of it. You'll notice it looks wonderfully tropical, and that wasn't the intended effect, but I liked it too much to want to change it. It just looks super cute. Then I'm taking the 2 eye shapes and I'm giving them their own gradient, and it's going to mix one of the colors from the character with what I decided to be the eye color. And what I'm actually doing, which you might find useful, is I'm going to grab the line gradient and I'm going to set it in between the 2 eyes so that it has an angle so that it looks about the same on each. And that's cool. And then I'm taking the remaining black parts and I'm using the union command again to make them one object, and then I'm going to apply the 2 pinks to it. I had considered just using the light pink or the dark pink, but I decided that would look kind of dull next to the other parts. And that's like a personal aesthetic choice. You don't have to do that. And again, you're gonna find yourself messing with this a lot until you get it just right. And this isn't just for tribal designs. This isn't the focus of it. This is for any vectors design you do. The more parts, the more difficult it'll become. There is a layer function, and you may find that useful if you're doing a lot of different things in your design. Like, I can think of a few art pieces I've done that would be a lot easier, both if I was doing them in vector and if I used the layer system. They would look a lot more crisp. But I didn't use that. I think for one of my future speed draws, I'm going to have to show like the full effective nature of it, but this is just a tutorial. This is supposed to give you a basic idea of what can be done. So what I'm doing is saving, and there are a few different ways to save, but I'm using the selection tool first, because it'll just save what I selected as my image. I'm giving it a name that I can remember, and then I'm going to export it. Export as just helps you to find what the name is and where it's going to go. You want to hit the export key. And there we go. Now, the cool thing about this is that PNGs, which is how it saves as, this is an export PNG, PNGs that save from this program save as automatically transparent, and I'm going to take a second to show you. There we go. It looks like that because the default background for my photo viewer is in black. And I was trying to find the zoom on this, but I think I'm just going to show you the zoom inside the program. But first, I'm applying a white box behind it. I'm going to select that. I'm going to put it behind the drawing, and I'm going to save that, and then it will have an opaque background. Now, you'll notice that I'm going into the menus for each of these just to show you what they look like, but there are key commands. It's usually like Control plus for union, Control D for duplicate, and it shows it in the menu. Mac users, I don't know 100% if it works on Mac. Try using the Command key instead of Control and see if that works. And that's what it looks like with white background. And this is where I was trying to find the zoom. It looks like there isn't a zoom here, though. I'll figure it out later. But that's pretty cute, isn't it? Now here's the cool thing. Vector programs are called such because they work with vector graphics, and my understanding of it is that vector graphics are made up of objects which are defined by paths, and the paths are defined by mathematical calculations, which you can't see on the program. I believe there is a setting that just allows you to show it, but I'm zooming in as much as humanly possible to show you that no matter how much I zoom in on this program, I receive no pixelation. As soon as I turn it into a PNG, you will get some pixelation, but this is great because, hypothetically speaking, I could make an image the size of a house and save that file at that size and have it printed, and it would look perfect. Now, I probably won't do that because it tends to overload my computer. I probably won't do that unless I need to, but the ability to do that is pretty cool. And that's pretty much it. Just save it and you're done. Oh, and don't forget, always save. Always save. This program likes to crash. I'm lucky it didn't do it to me on this tutorial. It'll usually save the file somewhere in your folder, but in case it doesn't, you're going to want to save constantly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Please leave questions in the comments if you have any. I'd be happy to answer any. I'm still learning about this program, but I know enough to answer some of the basic questions. Thank y'all so much for watching. A speed draw will happen later this week. I hope y'all have a great holiday. Bye.